Okay. Do you have yours? You have it up? Okay. Please repeat. Vilaja manaya yasya statum ikshapate muya vimohita vikatante mamaham iti durdiya. Please chant. Vilajamanaya yasya statum ikshapate yupmuya vimohita vikatante mamaham iti durdiyaha. Vilajamanaya, by one who is ashamed. Yasha, whose. Statum, to stay. Ikshapate, in front. Amuya, by the bewildering energy. Vimohita, those who are bewildered. Vikatante, talk nonsense. Mama, it is mine. Aham, I am everything. Iti, thus vituperating. Durdiya, thus ill-conceived. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of, it is I and it is mine. Purport. The invincibly powerful deluding energy of the personality of God, or the third energy, representing nescience, can bewilder the entire world of animation, but still she is not strong enough to be able to stand in front of the Supreme Lord. Nescience is behind the personality of Godhead, where she is powerful enough to mislead the living beings, and the primary symptom of bewildered persons is that they talk nonsense. Nonsensical talks are not supported by the principles of Vedic literatures, and first-grade nonsense talk is, it is I, it is mine. A godless civilization is exclusively conducted by such false ideas, and such persons without any factual realization of God accept a false God or falsely declare themselves to be God, to mislead persons who are already bewildered by the deluding energy. Those who are before the Lord, however, and who surrender unto Him cannot be influenced by the deluding energy. Therefore they are free from the conception of, it is I, it is mine. And therefore they do not accept a false God or pose themselves as equal to the Supreme Lord. Identification of the bewildered person is distinctly given in this verse. So I'll go back and read text 9 through 13. Lord Brahma said, my dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the almighty personality of Godhead. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. I create the Lord's creation by His personal effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti, just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of people, to call me the Supreme Controller. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of it is I and it is mine. So we just got done. Narada's asked a bunch of questions regarding Lord Brahma, how he came to know this information, what is the importance of it. And now Lord Brahma is starting to answer these questions. And as we see what happens quite often, whenever a saintly person starts to answer questions in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they do so first by glorifying Krishna, by glorifying God. And that's what we have pretty much in these verses that Lord Brahma is doing, is he's basically glorifying Krishna, saying, everything comes from him. And then the verse that we are looking at today, he starts to answer, part of the question where he's like, it is I, it is mine, and that's what bewilders us. So I wanted to talk about identity politics, because that's basically what we're talking about here, right? We get so caught up of who we are in this body that we don't pay attention to who we really are, the soul. So let's see if I can get this to work. Hello. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. So who wants to talk about identity? What are some identities that we relate to? If you can come and grab the mic, and then. If we can answer them, I've been requested that for people that discuss in the audience to speak into the mic, because the people online can't hear. So.
There's some common identities.
Did it stop working?
There you go. So common identities are to identify with the body, a certain color, black, white, brown, so many variations, and to identify as male or female. That it's a huge issue right now, gender identity, and so on and so forth. You identify as your job, or with your nation, or with your family or friends. So those are some identities. Okay.
So I'll go ahead and repeat, because I don't know if that microphone's working, because I could barely hear you. So I heard male, female, that gender identity is really big right now. The color of our skin, black, white, brown, everything in between. Our community, our friends, family, our job, right? We do tend to identify of all these things. Any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna. Haribol. Is it working?
I don't know. It's hard to tell.
I was thinking some additional ones are age. People they identify with being a kid or a youth or an adult or an elderly person. And also we can identify with being like, someone who's intelligent, someone who's scholarly, or I guess that corresponds with occupation or varna, I guess. But we can identify with particular lifestyle choices that we make. If we want to just live an alternative lifestyle, people identify very strongly with those kinds of things. Yeah, there's a few thoughts.
So it's wonderful. So she mentions lifestyle choices that we make, the achievements that we get that can go along with job and varna, our age, whether we're a kid or an adult. And even with that, we have so many more. We have the generations, right? Like, are we baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, Gen Z, right? That we have that kind of distinct, even within the age, a larger idea of who we are. But yeah, definitely. So it's like we think we are this body. So I look in the mirror and I think I'm female, of Indian descent, born in America, in Dallas, doctor slash teacher slash, daughter, sister, aunt, Gen X. I don't know what other identifications we have there. So there's so many things, right? So many number of things that we can identify with, and they're so small and minute. And at the same time, none of these things are who we are. But because we identify so strongly with them, it bewilders us, right? It says we're always bewildered by this absorption of thoughts of it is I, it is mine. And everything that we do, in some sense, it's related to these thoughts of it is I, it is mine, right? I'm feeling bad, I'm uncomfortable, I'm happy, I'm sad. But really, none of these things affect our soul, who we are. So what we want to do is figure out who it is that we really are, who's our true identity. And we're starting to understand this is when we are devotees of Krishna, of God, then we have a greater understanding of who we actually are, of our true identity. So at the same time, it's hard not to identify with this body because we're living in this body, right? So we may be servants of Krishna, we may be the pure spirit souls that are full of knowledge and bliss, and we're eternal beings. However, we're living in this body that's temporary and that has all these associations. And we're experiencing life through these different, identifications, right? So we don't want to negate what someone is going through as their experiences in this body, because also we have different needs according to our identification. As we mentioned, age, a 5-year-old has different needs and issues and concerns than a 15-year-old or a 50-year-old, right? So we have to pay attention to that level of the body. But we also want to know that we want to understand, truly understand and internalize that we're not this body. I feel like this is like the most fundamental teachings of Krishna consciousness that Prabhupada was really trying to instill in us. And I feel like it's also the hardest concept to grasp, right? Because when we are going through life and we're living life in this body, it's hard not to identify as this body. It's hard not to feel pain if I get cut. It's hard not to feel cold or hot or happy or sad. And all of this is related to the identity that I'm in right now, the body that I'm occupying. And so, we want to gain this understanding that we are not this body. So, what are some things that we undergo as a result of these identity politics? Does anyone want to share any thoughts of good, bad experiences of identifying with who, the body and what it means for you? Whichever, whether you're labeled as your body or you identify as your body, and what that experience was for you. The microphone? Yeah, I know. It's like you tap
Hare
on
Bill?
it, you can hear it.
Hare Krishna.
I wonder if we need to turn up the volume on it. Yeah. That's an excellent example. Thank you for sharing. So she shares that when she was held at gunpoint during a robbery and shot, actually, she immediately, like, acutely identified with her body. And it's hard not to in that situation because her body was in distress. And there were needs of the body that needed to be taken care of, right? So, she had to seek medical help. She's in pain. Did she go through surgery? She had to go through surgery and then, rehabilitation through all of that. And so, we can't just say, oh, well, we're not this body, and meditate the bullet out of your body. And, maybe there are some powerful mystic yogis that can do something like that, but most of us ordinary folk, we don't. I acutely identify with the body in a distressful situation like that. And then we tend to do it in a less obvious way every single day, right? Like, I'm feeling hot, I'm feeling cold, I'm hungry, thirsty, I'm full, I'm sleepy, right? The soul is none of these things. On some level, the soul is hungry, but it's not hungry for food, right? It's hungry for the reconnection with Krishna. The soul is hungry for knowing and who we actually are. However, it's not hungry for the bodily needs. And when we identify so acutely with our body, when we're not in distress, right, we tend to think, okay, I'm this body, I'm, female, and I'm living in this house, and I want to have certain things, and we start to want to pursue pleasure, right, for the body, because we acutely identify with the body. So these things, these opulences that we pursue, like wealth, strength, fame, beauty, wisdom, renunciation, we use all of this to try to bring us pleasure. And we think that these things will give us power, right? And so part of the issues with identity politics is that the identity that I am is better than the identity that you are. And so we try to gain control through some of these means. Like, I have more wealth, therefore I'm better. I have more strength, therefore I'm better. And we use these to, maybe oppress others or put someone else down so we can feel better. Sometimes we have this idea that there's always winners and losers, and we have to be on the winning side. Whereas when we're looking at the perspective that we're all spirit souls occupying a body, then we think if we can reconnect to who we are with Krishna, and we can help others to do the same, then we're all winners, right? There is no matter of losing in that perspective. But when we look at it in the material perspective, we do think of winners and losers. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna really, this is the first point that Krishna explains to Arjuna, is that the soul is what is the important thing, right? Because he's trying to alleviate Arjuna's concerns about death and killing his family members and all at the onset of the war, the battle of Kurukshetra. And he says in Bhagavad Gita 2:13, as the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So this basically is saying, the soul continually changes in these outer coverings. Our identity changes. Even in one's lifetime, the identity changes. What to speak of when you take on a new body, you have a whole new set of identity. He goes on to say in 2:16, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. And he goes on, 2:20, he says, for the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time, They not come into being, do not come into being, and will not come into being. They are unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. They are not slain when the body is slain. And then he concludes that with, as a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. So here he's saying that all these things prove that the soul is eternal, and it's not the body that we're in is not the true identity of who we are. And when we can really come to understand that and feel that and live our lives that way, we're no longer bewildered by death and life and all the ills and sufferings of the material world, because we truly understand that we are not really undergoing that. The body is experiencing these things, but not really us per se. So just because we are switching bodies every lifetime does not mean we don't take care of this body. We have to address the needs. As Mother Kunti had shared, that when she got shot, she needed to address the needs of the body in that moment to make sure that her identity or her contributions in this body continued, right? Because we can also say something like, oh, well, we don't have to worry about it because, the soul will just move on. And, Krishna says to Arjuna that the soul is never slain and the body is. So we can take, getting shot or something like that, getting stabbed, being in a war, as the body just, it's not the soul, so we don't need to worry about it. But that's not exactly what it means. Krishna is giving us this body, and we have to take care of it. If we use our body for Krishna's purpose, right? If we're making sure that when we bathe, we're cleaning Krishna's body, right? He's lent it to us. We're just borrowing it for this lifetime, and we want to take care of it. There's a quote that I like from the College of Lifestyle Medicine is, it's a good way to think about it, is that I don't mind dying, I just don't want it to be my fault, right? So in that sense, we want to do what we can to take care of the body. And we have that responsibility. In a lecture, my spiritual teacher, Tamal Krishna Goswami, said, and when he was discussing Canto 1, text 17, chapter 17, text 22, he said, your body, your mind, your life is already given to someone else. So for yourself, you can tolerate all kinds of abuse, but since your body and mind and you don't belong to you anymore, they belong to Krishna, you have to do something about it. It's not your property anymore. You can let someone steal your property, but if I give you my property to take care of, you can't let anybody do anything to it. You have to guard it. So since you've already dedicated your body, mind, and life to Krishna, it does not belong to you anymore. You have to protect it. It's Krishna's property in your care. Therefore, we defend if someone attacks. So he's making it very clear that we do what we can to take care of this body. And, we could combine that with the verses in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna's telling Arjuna, we have to be mindful, right? But we don't want to sleep too much or too little. We don't want to eat too much or too little, right? So we want to do what we need to do to maintain this body, not too much or too little. And it varies. What I needed to do when I was 20 to maintain, energy and be able to do things is quite different than what I need to do in my 40s to maintain my energy, right? So we have to be very mindful that in some ways these identities do make a difference in what our needs are and how we need to take care of the body. So, what are some ways that we can really understand that we are not this body? What are some things that we can do to help us with that?
Can you please repeat the question again?
Say that again. It was
Question. What is the question?
the question is, what are some things that we can do to really understand that we're not this body? If you can. She's
Hare Krishna. I think that's the purpose of austerities. You know, like getting up early in the morning, bathing, you know, all these things, like maintaining high standards of cleanliness. Because it's like when the body, fasting also, because the senses are demanding one thing and you're kind of cutting it. Like body wants to stay in bed and you're like, no, we're getting up. It's not about you. I'm not this body, I'm the soul, and the soul wants to get up. And then, you know, fasting, the body is like screaming at you, I need to eat, I need to eat. You're just like, nope, not this body. So whenever we kind of like deny the body's demands to be indulged and kind of like, you know, for a higher purpose, of course not being extreme, but, you know, just general austerities that devotees do, then that helps us to get off the bodily concept of life.
wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's true. When we take on some austerities, make some sacrifices, push ourselves, right, beyond our comfort, we can really start to understand that, and we do it from that position of we're not this body. Because someone else can do the same thing, get up early, go to the gym, work out, really like put in a lot of effort to, and they have that discipline. They're also committing austerities, you know, to achieve the beauty, right, strength, some of those opulences. So the difference there is exactly what you said, where you said, coming from that position of no, the soul wants to get up and it wants to do something, and reframing it from doing things for the body to the soul. I like that. It's very profound.
And also, like, when you do those things, then, let's say you're in japa and you're, like, falling asleep, and you had enough sleep, you know, like, you're not sleep deprived, but you're just falling asleep. But if you just kind of, like, push through, just, like, don't fall into the trap of, oh, I'll go take a nap or something, or just kind of, like, force yourself to wake up and be alert, then the sleepiness just goes away. And the same thing, like, on a fasting day, you know, if you'll be hungry, and you can go crazy if you're just meditating on your hunger, but if you just engage in some service, then you can break through that hunger trauma, you know, and just transcend it. You know, you can literally just like push through it and be on another platform where it stops bothering you.
I like that. What came to mind when you said that was having Krishna as our anchor. So he's the reason, right? He's our goal. So when we're feeling kind of sleepy and we anchor into being servants of Krishna and being spirit soul and wanting to serve Krishna, then it does, you know, we can find ways to defeat that sleep. I see this a lot when we talk about, when I take courses on business development, personal development, right? They teach us ways to like push through those fatigue times, because we have that. Like you said, whether or not we're sleep deprived, we have times where we're more energetic and less energetic. And, you know, sometimes just sitting still can make us feel sleepy. But again, it's the reason behind it, right? For someone who is, I don't know, an entrepreneur, their reason behind pushing through that lull, that decrease in energy is totally different than what we're talking about, right? So it's like we're anchoring in our reason for the discipline that we want to have, the reason to push past these bodily limitations, even mind limitations, right? Because sometimes it's not even the body that needs it's the mind that tells us, oh no, we can't, right? Or oh no, we want to stay safe in our comfort zone, in our cocoon. But sometimes it's, so the good thing about that is that not only are we not our body, we're also not our mind, right? And so we can use these things, these examples that we can see great examples both in the spiritual world and in the material world. And we can say, wow, if such and such person can do this in the material world, we surely can tap into a fraction of that to serve Krishna, right? So an example that comes to mind to me is Tony Robbins. I don't know if you've ever heard him speak, attended any of his seminars or anything like that. This man has like nonstop energy. He starts, first thing, and he goes, he gives, like, his days go 14, 15 hours, and he's up there on stage jumping around, talking, shouting. I think he's even shared that, like, he runs like almost a marathon, like if he does the same amount of effort as running a marathon every day that he gives talks, right? So he is very disciplined in everything that he does to be able to maintain that. And I was thinking, wow, if I just did a fraction of how much he does, how much could I serve Krishna and Srila Prabhupada, right? And so even though that's a material example, we can always derive these things from, and see how we can use it in Krishna's service. And that's what changes us identifying with our body for Krishna versus us identifying with our body for our own sense gratification, right? So in both scenarios, we're identifying with our body, right? So it's like, how do I serve Krishna in a female body? How do I serve Krishna in an Indian descent, person of Indian descent's body? How, instead of thinking, how do I not have discomfort in this material world because of this? Or how do I gain power because of this? And so we do this by really engaging with certain guidelines that can really help us understand that we're not this body. Like you said, performing austerities. But on the other side of that, right, we make the vow of no intoxication. Because the heart of no intoxication is that we understand that this world is full of suffering. And we agree to embrace that suffering with austerity. And so the value, the spiritual pillar that we're really embracing with no intoxication is austerity. Same with when we say, we're not going to eat meat, fish, and eggs because we're all spirit souls. So even the animals are spirit souls. And so we can really come to understand that we are not this body, and we're not going to harm other people's identities, right? Other people based on their body, which would be like, killing a chicken so you can have a meal. That's harming someone else's identity. And by doing that, we practice compassion and mercy, right? Mercy is another pillar of spiritual progress, of really understanding we are not this body. Not to mention, when we talk about taking care of the body, eating a vegetarian lifestyle helps maintain good health of the body as well, right? And then we also do the same with gambling. Gambling is another thing that if we practice a lot of, it really keeps us thinking we're this body. But when we when we say, okay, we're not going to gamble, obviously overt gambling, things like, playing poker or going to Vegas and gambling like that. But also, every day that we live without serving Krishna is a gamble. Every moment that we are not dedicating to Krishna is a gamble. So, we do that so that we can embrace truthfulness, which is another quality, of the foundational pillars of spiritual progress. And then the fourth thing that we really embrace is no illicit sex, which helps us to understand cleanliness, right? And I would probably argue that there is no greater activity that we can do in this body that will help keep us in this, thinking that we're this body, than, the sexual act, right? So we want to embrace these 4 principles by, and we make these vows when we sit down and we say, you know what, I really want to dedicate my life to serving Krishna and realizing that I am a servant of Krishna. Then we make these 4 vows. And then on top of that, we vow that we're going to chant every single day. So these are things we vowed we not to do, but it's always good to see what we are doing by making these not doing vows, right? So we say no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. But what we're really saying is that we are going to practice mercy, austerity, truthfulness, and cleanliness when we make those vows, right? So as you mentioned, getting up, cleaning, taking a shower, taking a bath, that it's austerity, especially depending on the weather. Like, it's really hard during the wintertime to get out of bed because it's so cold. And then, they say even in the wintertime, a cold shower can give you energy. That's really hard to do. So it's super austerity, right? So these kinds of things that we can do to help us really understand that we're not this body. In my training, as well as not so much after my training of becoming a doctor in residency, but during my training, I had, I guess, the opportunity to see, people dying and be there at the moment when they left their bodies. And when you see that, you really do understand that we are not this body. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience of witnessing a soul leaving the body. It's a very sober thing. I think the only other time outside of training for medicine is when my father left his body. Although he actually, the moment his soul left was when, we'd been there for our family. We were hanging out there with him because we knew it was time. And my brother and I had left to go, we hadn't left the house in 3 days, and we had to go and get some groceries or whatever. And it was at that moment my dad left, right? And they say often that the people that are holding, he's very attached to us, so his soul could only leave when we were not in the house anymore. And that's exactly what happened. And, so we can see, I didn't get to see that happen, but I had seen it many times when I was working in the hospital. And you really do get this understanding. One moment there's life, even if they're not moving, they're barely breathing, and the next moment I can't even explain that difference there. So we really want to be mindful of people's identities and how they identify, because we can undermine someone or undermine their interest in Krishna consciousness and becoming, and realizing that they're servants of God's if we minimize or negate some of the experiences they're having as a result of being in a certain type of body. So I'll stop here and see if there's any questions, comments. I said that if we negate the experience someone's having as a result of the body that they're living in, it can discourage them from, understanding that they are servants of Krishna and realizing, reconnecting that relationship. I think that's what I said.
That's very powerful. Your approach.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any other questions, concerns, comments? Experiences you want to share? Reflections, realizations?
It's actually very helpful. It's very fundamental to hear that we're not this body. At the same time, it's really at the root of what prevents us from being Christian.
That's so true. So the comment there was that, hearing that we're not this body is so fundamental, and it's the heart of the matter, but it also is what keeps us from being fully Krishna conscious. It's absolutely true. Yeah. Thank you. So I would say, as something to contemplate, right? Because we never leave a place of motivation without a commitment to action. So something to contemplate as we go through our days or the week is all the different ways that we identify with this body, right? And, it might be a fun activity to do at the end of the day, just kind of consider, oh, when this happened, I was really identifying with my body. And, it can be hunger, thirst, an argument with someone said something, right? Things like that. So when you start to look at that, you can see how we're moving through the world really affected by our identity, right? How we're going through. And it can also help us kind of separate ourselves from that too. So, all right, so I'll stop there if there's no other questions.